Welcome to Day Off DIY. This is the first of many videos on my new to me 2001 BMW 330i E46 chassis. This car first came to me on a tow truck, had a dead battery, a hemorrhaging coolant leak, and a couple other issues including a check engine light. Overall, the exterior is in really good shape. I haven't even given the car a bath at this point, and the paint is in pretty good condition considering the mileage and the age. This car is going on 21 years of age, and so with that in mind, the paint is actually really clean. The interior could use a little bit of love. Overall, it's in good shape. However, the seats do have some fading as well as some cracking, which I plan on addressing in a future video, getting those things restored back to their former glory. But with all things considered, 195,000 miles on the car, purchase price of $500, I am very happy with the car as is, and I think it will be a great project, hoping to turn this thing into a good, reliable commuter that can get me to and from my day job throughout the week. There also was quite a bit of bubbling and peeling on the interior tint, which I'm hoping to get rectified as well. The trunk is in really good shape after getting her cleaned out. The trunk always does a really good job of telling you what the vehicle has gone through prior to you getting it. There were several coolant jugs as well as some body fasteners that I found in there. True to the fact that the previous owner was telling me about, with the vehicle having some consistent coolant leaks that he was trying to rectify, and that's the reason why they put this vehicle on the market. He had replaced the expansion tank as well as some other cooling system components, could not find the source of the leak, vehicle kept overheating, so the previous owner got frustrated and they unloaded it for a really cheap price. Luckily, I have some previous experience on these cars. I happen to know them pretty well, so perfect opportunity for me to cut my teeth and get the first of many video series popped out on this channel. So from here, we're just going to be gaining access to the engine. We're going to be pulling off the microfilter or cabin air filter assembly. We're going to use this pocket screwdriver here, which by the way is one of the handiest tools you can have as a mechanic. But we're going to get the microfilter assembly out of the way and work on getting these engine covers popped off. That way we can have good access to the intake manifold as well as the valve cover. At this point, I'm pulling the ignition coils. The connectors for each coil are held on with a small metal clip. You just lift upwards with a pocket screwdriver or flathead, the connector will come right out, as well as some 10mm bolts that fasten each ignition coil down into the top end of the engine. We're going to be pulling these ignition coils, inspecting the boots on the end of them, make sure they're not dry rotted or cracking, and after we get those out, we're going to be getting access to the spark plugs. This vehicle had some Bosch Platinum spark plugs in it. Bosch can be just fine. In my experience, I've always preferred using NGKs on these BMWs. They just seem to like them. I like the quality of the NGK plugs, so I'll be swapping those out at a later date. However, right now what we're doing is just inspecting the quality and the condition of the spark plugs, as well as getting myself access to use this Automotive compression tester. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be threading this compression tester fitting down into the spark plug threads. We're going to use a piece of paper to document our compression test numbers, and we're going to be checking the compression on all 6 cylinders to make sure that this thing did not get nuclear hot and cause any head gasket issues for the future. So as you can see, we're sitting at about 170 psi. That's great for an engine with 21 years of age as well as 195,000 miles. Car's expected to lose maybe 10-20 psi from its original factory compression as it ages to this point. So I am relatively happy with the compression on the first cylinder, and the story was exactly the same for all 6. I was sitting at about 165 to 170 psi for all 6 cylinders, so that indicates to me that there's no current issues with any piston rings, valves, and that the head gasket is in good shape and it didn't get smoking hot and cause any head gasket failures. So At this point, that gives me the confidence to move over to the cooling system and to look into that and figure out where this leak is actually coming from. With the compression numbers where they are, I feel that I can get into the cooling system, replace whatever leaks I may have there, and the car will still be a good running and driving vehicle after I make the repairs. Here is one of my favorite lubricants. It is a 3M lubricant. It's the wet style. I like to use it on all of my ignition coils as well as any O-rings or seals that I need to get pressed in. It just has great lubricating properties. I use that in conjunction with the silicone grease sometimes if it really needs it, and it just helps keep a good strong contact with anything I'm installing. So at this point, I'm removing the airbox, disconnecting the mass airflow sensor. There is a 6mm head on the hose clamp and two 10mm head bolts on the right side of the airbox in order to get that out. Down here, I'm looking at the position of the water pipes. They are hard plastic rigid pipes that tie into the cylinder head, and they are part of the cooling system. They're commonly overlooked and they're not really that well known for most shade tree mechanics that do work at home. However, like I said, I have some experience on these cars, so I know that's probably where the issue is coming from. I'm going to be using this snap-on cooling system pressure tester, which does require a specialty adapter for these BMWs. BMWs use a threaded style radiator cap, so I will put the link in the description down below so you can find that for this style cooling system. I tried to put some pressure into the system, but the leak is so large that I'm not able to build any pressure. So I'm just using some water here so I don't waste any coolant. Get the expansion tank topped off. I'm using this big flathead screwdriver to pull the bleeder screw. That way I know that I have the entire cooling system filled with water, and then I'm going to retest and try again to find the exact location of this leak. But as I was filling it, I could see coolant or water dumping out of the back end of that water pipe, so I have a pretty good idea that that's exactly where it's coming from. Here I can show the bleeder screw as well as the upper radiator hose. I'm just going over and pointing out the location of that water pipe. There's two of them under there, and they connect to rubber hoses using the classic BMW style clip. The intake manifold has to come off for this repair. You can crack it up partially, but while I'm in there, I'm going to be replacing this breather system that I'm pointing to. It is the crankcase ventilation system for this car, also known as a cyclonic oil separator. It basically takes the crankcase pressure and it reinserts it back into the intake stream, while at the same time removing the oil from the crankcase pressure, draining that back down into the oil pan, and recirculating that air back up into the intake stream after it's been cleaned. You can see there's a big old puddle down on the concrete from that coolant leak, so after getting it filled and popping that bleeder screw, I know where that coolant leak's coming from, and so I'm going to get this car pulled over out of my truck's parking spot and into the side so I can tear into it and start getting cracking on this job. Here we are just getting the airbox back into the vehicle. The car is completely drivable with the engine covers and the microfilter assembly out, so I'm just getting this thing movable so I can get it back into the preferred spot to where I want to do the teardown. So here I am beginning my second diagnosis. I have a check engine light that is a P0171 and a P0174. These two check engine lights indicate that the engine is running too lean on bank 1 and bank 2. Quick explanation of that: the mass airflow sensor monitors all of the air coming into the intake stream, so it's pumping enough fuel to match whatever volume of air is coming past that sensor. Usually these codes indicate a vacuum leak, which means that there is unmetered air coming in behind the mass airflow sensor, thus throwing off the fuel ratio. So I have this smoke machine that I bought off Amazon. Say maybe it's $150, including the adapter. I'll put the link in the description for you. And what I'm doing is I'm connecting it to the battery as well as a compressed air hose, and this machine uses mineral oil as well as an electric coil, and it burns the mineral oil, creating smoke. The compressed air pushes the smoke through that hose into the adapter, and I have that adapter there sealed into the intake boot. So we are pressurizing the entire intake manifold system with smoke in order for us to identify any leaks or weak points in the intake manifold or intake stream, as well as just the engine in general. So we're trying to hunt down and identify where this vacuum leak is exactly coming from. So I wasn't able to pinpoint any exact locations on the vacuum leak yet, so here I'm just pulling some components, getting a little bit more access to the intake manifold, getting that cover on the brake reservoir out of the way just to get some better access down into the back of the manifold. And I'm just going to kind of start tearing into it, pulling some components out just to check the overall health of the gaskets and the components themselves. This first one I'm pulling out is called a DISA valve, and they're usually prone to failure. However, this one's in really good shape. The diaphragm is still good, the pin is still there and intact. There's a small metal pin in those that are known to fall out of the DISA, and they actually go down into the cylinder head, and they can jam up your intake valves and cause quite a bit of mess, but this one's in good shape. The intake boots are also very prone to cracking and failing on these vehicles. The lower intake boot has a smaller turkey neck style hose that branches off of it, sort of accordion style looking, and this one is actually intact. However, that's one of the first items I look at when I do see lean codes or vacuum leaks on these vehicles. Secondly, I'm pulling out the idle air control valve. I like to spray them out with a little bit of brake cleaner and make sure that they're operating properly. You can see I'm sort of twisting it. You can hear, they're also known as a thumper valve. You can hear sort of this chunk of metal inside there rock side to side. Sometimes they can get a little gummed up. This one was working in great shape, and so that wasn't really an issue or concern of mine. Secondly, I'm getting down and getting the throttle body pulled out. Throttle body requires a little bit of removal of parts to get access to it, but I did find something interesting once I did get the throttle body pulled out. Also, while I did have intake components out of the vehicle, I did notice that there was a small pinhole leak on the lower intake boot. It was hidden by the hose clamp and actually caused by the hose clamp. The hose clamp had pressed through the intake boot, causing a small pinhole leak. So while I had that out, I got a new part ordered up and got that rectified. And as you can see here, this is what I was talking about for the throttle body. Someone had over torqued it and snapped the head off the bolt on the bottom right portion of the throttle body flange. So you can also see a small puddle of green coolant underneath, and that's caused by the water pipe that's leaking up above it. Upon smoke testing the vehicle one late night, I also found an additional vacuum leak down here at the fuel filter. There's that small piece of vacuum hose I took off, and that runs from the engine down to the fuel pressure regulator on the front end of the fuel filter. So ran down to the auto parts store, got a new piece of filter, got a small section of vacuum hose as well, and I got that rectified. With the vacuum hose to the fuel pressure regulator, as well as the intake boot being replaced and getting that throttle body properly resealed, that took care of my check engine light conditions. It rectified my lean codes for the engine. However, the intake manifold is still going to be coming out in order to fix the water pipes as well as replace that crankcase ventilation system. So that about wraps it up for the diagnosis of this car for this video. We ended up finding 3 vacuum leaks, as well as diagnosing where our coolant leak is coming from. This is the first of many videos on this series, and I plan on going through and taking you along with me for the whole process of getting this thing turned into a nice clean daily driver. So if you like the video, please feel free to shoot it a like, and be sure to subscribe along with the channel. That way you can be updated and notified when I have a new video part coming out for this series. We're going to be doing everything from seat repairs, intake manifold, getting the car detailed out. Eventually we're going to give it a really nice finish on the paint too. So I hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.